It's the most natural thing in the world, isn't it? To desire children, to build a family, to pass on your genes, your name, your legacy. It's praised, it's celebrated, it's seen as the very definition of a full life. But what if that desire, that seemingly universal instinct, is actually the source of all human tragedy? What if the single greatest act of love we can perform is to not bring a new life into this world? I know. It sounds extreme. It sounds cold, maybe even offensive. And that's okay. Because today, we're diving into one of the most provocative, uncomfortable, and yet strangely empathetic philosophies ever conceived, antinatalism. Specifically, we'll explore the ideas of Peter Wessel Zapffe, the Norwegian philosopher who famously argued that life itself is a biological error, and that to create new life is to perpetuate an unnecessary cycle of suffering. This isn't a lecture to convince you not to have children. This is an invitation to understand a perspective so radical, it challenges the very core of what it means to be human. By the end of this 40 minutes, you might not agree with Zapffe, but you will certainly understand why he, and many others, arrived at the conclusion that having children is a tragic mistake. And perhaps you'll never look at a newborn baby quite the same way again. To grasp antinatalism, we first have to return to Zapffe's foundational idea, that our consciousness is an evolutionary burden. Remember the Irish elk? Its magnificent antlers, its evolutionary success, ultimately led to its downfall. Zapffe saw human consciousness as our own set of impossibly heavy antlers. Our ability to grasp infinity, to comprehend our own mortality, to feel empathy for boundless suffering. These are abilities no other animal possesses to our degree, and they are too much for us to bear. This over-evolved intellect leads to what Zapffe called cosmic panic, the unbearable realization of our insignificance, our impermanence, and the indifferent vastness of the universe. We are burdened with a capacity for suffering, regret, and existential dread that no other species faces. Now, if we are already suffering under the weight of this biological paradox, what does that imply for bringing more conscious beings into this inherently painful existence? This is where antinatalism begins. Let's define antinatalism, because it's often misunderstood. It's not about hating children, or hating life, or advocating for the extinction of humanity, though some radical interpretations exist. At its core, antinatalism is the philosophical position that it is morally wrong to bring new sentient beings into existence. It's about preventing suffering, not inflicting it. There are several key arguments that support this position, and they connect deeply with Zapffe's thinking. First, there's the asymmetry of pleasure and pain. This is a core argument from philosopher David Benatar, but it's highly relevant to Zapffe. The logic goes like this: the absence of pain is good. The absence of pleasure is not bad, at least not for someone who doesn't exist. The presence of pain is bad. The presence of pleasure is good. The conclusion? We have a moral imperative to prevent pain. Creating a new life guarantees the possibility of immense suffering, but the absence of that life is not a loss of pleasure for anyone. A non-existent person cannot be deprived of happiness. Second, there's the guarantee of suffering. Zapffe would argue that simply being human guarantees a certain degree of existential suffering. You will experience pain, loss, fear, disappointment, and ultimately, death. This is not optional. Third, there's the consent problem. Can you ask a non-existent being for consent to be born into a world of inevitable challenges and suffering? Antinatalists argue no, and therefore, it's an imposed burden. This isn't about your happiness or your potential child's happiness. It's about the inherent ethical weight of forcing a new consciousness to carry the burden of existence. The question isn't, will they be happy? The question is it right to gamble with someone else's guaranteed suffering for the chance of their happiness? This is usually the point where most people react strongly. But what about love? What about joy? What about hope? If no one has children, humanity dies out. Life is a gift. These are all valid, deeply human responses. So let's tackle them head-on, through a Zapffian lens. First objection: life is a gift. Zapffe's response would be, a gift to whom? The recipient never asked for it. And what kind of gift comes with a guarantee of pain, struggle, and eventual decay? Zapffe would say we call it a gift because it's our primary anchoring mechanism, a deeply ingrained biological and societal narrative we cling to in order to make sense of our own struggle. Second objection: what about hope, joy, love, meaning? Zapfe's response: these are our sublimations and distractions. They are the beautiful, intricate blankets we weave to cover the gaping maw of cosmic panic. We create meaning, joy, and love, because life is inherently meaningless, painful, and indifferent. These aren't justifications for creating new life. They are desperate coping mechanisms for the life already created. Third objection, but humanity would end. Zappfe's response, and what precisely is the cosmic tragedy of humanity ending? From the perspective of the universe, it's a blink. From the perspective of the non-existent, there is no loss. For Zapffe, the last Messiah isn't a figure of doom, but of ultimate compassion, the one who dares to say, "Let the suffering end. Let us be the last." He saw the urge to endlessly propagate as a blind, unthinking biological imperative, divorced from ethical consideration. For Zapffe, the ethical calculus is simple. A life must contain suffering. A non-existent life cannot suffer. Therefore, from a purely compassionate standpoint, non-existence is preferable to existence. It's crucial to understand that Zapffe was not a hateful man. He wasn't advocating for mass suicide or the immediate end of the world. His philosophy stems from a profound, almost agonizing empathy for the human condition. He saw the relentless, unchosen suffering embedded in consciousness, and his call for a last Messiah was an act of ultimate compassion, a desire to prevent future generations from inheriting this same biological catastrophe. Think about the four defenses we've discussed before, but this time in the context of procreation. We have children to isolate ourselves from loneliness or the fear of our own death. We have children to anchor ourselves in a legacy, a family name, a societal role. Children can be a powerful distraction from our own existential angst. Their needs fill our days and minds. And raising children can be seen as the ultimate creative act, turning our raw existence into a project of love and nurturing. But Zapffe would ask, are these defenses truly for the child, or are they for us? Are we bringing new life into the world to satisfy our own psychological needs, knowing full well the suffering they are guaranteed to encounter? Whether you agree with Zapffe's antinatalism or not, his philosophy forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our decision to have children is rarely a purely rational, ethical one. It's driven by deep-seated biological urges, societal pressures, and our own profound, often unconscious, psychological needs. He believed that humanity has an innate, almost self-deceptive will to live, to perpetuate, even at the cost of unimaginable future suffering. And he dared to ask, is this impulse always ethical? Is it always good? Or is it simply a blind, unthinking continuation of a profound biological mistake? His work isn't about telling you what to do with your own life. It's about challenging the unquestioned assumptions that govern the most fundamental decision any human can make. It's about demanding a higher ethical standard than just because we can. This is not an easy philosophy to sit with, and if you've made it this far, you've demonstrated a remarkable willingness to grapple with some of the darkest, yet most profound questions of existence. I want to know your thoughts. Do you find Zapffe's argument persuasive, or do you find it ultimately too bleak? How do you reconcile the immense joy of parenthood with the potential for inevitable suffering? This is a topic that demands honest, respectful discussion, and I invite you to share your perspective in the comments below. Let's try to understand each other, even when we fundamentally disagree. If this video challenged your assumptions, please consider subscribing. And if you want to explore more uncomfortable truths, check out my other videos on similar philosophical topics. Thank you for being brave enough to think deeply. I'll see you in the next one.